Pauline and Clara, welcome to the Building and Growing podcast. We're delighted to have you here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
You're most welcome. So Pauline and Clara are the founders or co-founders of Madonna Capital. Should we start off with a couple of quick introductions about you as individuals?
Yeah, sure. So I'll go first. So I'm Pauline Li, one of the co-founders and co-managing partner of Madonna Capital. In terms of my background, I'm a chartered accountant from Australia. I started KPMG in consulting and risk advisory for financial services, where I spent almost 5 years.
Fantastic.
It's where I qualified, and I had clients such as Citigroup and the top banks in Australia. Then I moved on to operating commercial roles in large corporates, which included, media, oil and gas, construction. And I finally found my niche in luxury consumer, where I work for brands like Christian Dior Couture, and also Sisley Paris, which is a French cosmetics brand.
Fantastic.
And in between that, I started my career in startups and scale-ups, where I helped raise a Series B as a head of finance for an Australian fashion tech startup. They're now talking about listing on a stock exchange, which is a really good story for them.
Indeed.
And in the UK, I worked for a tech platform where I helped them build out the finance teams across North America, Australia, Hong Kong, UK, and Ireland.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you so much for that introduction, Pauline. Always great to see another Australian in London.
We're everywhere.
We are indeed. And fantastic introduction, very illustrious career. And we'll hand over to Clara.
Thanks. So on my side, before co-founding Madonna Capital, I was in banking for around 10 years. So I started off my career in very traditional banking. I focused on corporate banking within hospitality and leisure, dealing with some of the biggest companies in the world in their industry, from gambling software all the way to the largest cruise ship companies. So very diverse.
Fantastic.
And dealing with very complex businesses, which was very insightful for me kicking off my career in banking. However, I very much felt like a cog in the machine dealing with businesses at that level. At the same time, working for the likes of Barclays, I felt very passionate about innovating within the organization in order to, create innovation that would support people in what they do in delivering for clients.
Yes.
So within that, I moved divisions from corporate banking into technology. So I built out and implemented a platform across many clients within Barclays in order to improve the relationships between the bank and its clients. So it's a very successful project and allowed, people within Barclays to have more time to have strategic conversations with clients rather than getting in the weeds and sort of the administrative side of things.
Yes.
And then I moved on to become a founding team member of the High Growth and Entrepreneurs division within Barclays. So working alongside a team to build out a proposition to cover the UK market, which was very exciting and something I felt very passionate about, working with very innovative businesses, in this case from seed to Series B. Mm-hmm. So within that, I managed Barclays Venture Debt Fund, so supporting businesses which were VC-backed with financing, and also implemented a team across the UK to cover the UK market. And then from there, I moved to an Israeli bank, but albeit based in the UK, and established their venture debt fund here to cover the market. Again, dealing with great innovative companies. So it was very exciting for me to be close to the market and supportive of the businesses out there. And that was from Series A to pre-private equity. But albeit, wanted to support female entrepreneurs and then embarked upon the journey with Pauline in founding Madonna Capital.
Excellent. And look, another fantastic career. I think, between the two of you, it almost seems as if there were 10 people, on those sort of resumes or achievement lists. So congratulations to you both. And, what a duo, a chartered accountant and investment banker have come together now to, form Madonna Capital. So tell us more about, sort of why you formed Madonna Capital, and you mentioned a little bit about supporting female entrepreneurs. We'd love to hear more.
I think a lot of people ask us, how did we meet? and how Madonna Capital came about. So Clara and I actually met through a mutual friend, and we met socially. It was actually during COVID, and we formed a really good friendship. We were part of a friendship circle that included really strong, successful, and just very empowering women.
Yes.
And we were talking about this issue. Like when I was in corporate, we were talking about the gender pay gap.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow we're talking about, we ended up talking about the gender funding gap because some of our friends were investment bankers and worked in family offices, and they're serial entrepreneurs as well, all females.
Yes.
And this was a problem that we had been talking about. It's not like we meet up and talk about it over dinner. It's just been in the peripheral of our conversations. And I was like, why is this happening? It's just so shocking that funding to all female founded teams set around 1% to 2%.
Wow.
In UK and Europe. It's slightly better in the US. I think they've done a lot more work around that.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the UK, we're still a long way to go.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, well, it's really down to the capital that is being allocated to all female founded teams. So we thought, what was the best way for us to be able to help female founders and businesses with a fair female representation to get that funding? And, we didn't start this business thinking, we need to start a business. We started this business because we thought there's a problem and someone needs to solve that. Where's the solution? Before we started Madonna Capital, how many funds can you name that focused on investing in female founders?
Yeah.
So Pink Salt came along maybe last year. We founded Madonna Capital 2 years ago, so March, actually on International Women's Day in 2021, which was very meaningful to us.
So nearly, your 2-year anniversary, we're going to publish on the 7th, so, on the 8th.
Yeah, so it's basically, this podcast is celebrating our 2-year anniversary, 2 years birthday. But we started Madonna Capital so that we can deploy our skills.
Yes.
Because yes, there's the capital, but how do you get, as a female founder, how do you get to the point where an investor would invest into your business?
Yeah.
And so we focus on that we felt that was the quickest way that we could be part of the solution. There's a whole, we can talk for days as to why there's a problem.
Yes.
But what we really wanted to focus on at Madonna Capital is the solution. And that is really, being client first.
Mm-hmm.
So we are focused on the female founder or the female co-founder.
Yes.
And then just, helping them with the pitch, the storytelling, the financials, and then connecting them with the right investor.
Yeah.
That's why we founded Madonna Capital. But in terms of what we do and a bit more about the services that we provide, I'll leave that to Clara to talk about.
Indeed.
Thanks, Pauline. So I think just from the outset, we're not a fund. We are angel investors in our own right. And I think it's important to note why we decided to take that route, because we have had quite a few actually investors saying, why aren't you raising a fund? But then we felt that our reach and our impact would be limited. In terms of deploying a fund, there's limitations around that. And if you invest in one particular business, you can't invest in a similar one. So we feel like our reach is greater on that basis.
Mm-hmm.
So we've supported companies all the way from seed to pre-IPO, but we've really kind of honed in our focus to seed to Series B, because we want to sort of move the dial on the gender funding gap. And so coming in at the later stage, it doesn't really do that. I think if we were to help a particular business, and we have at pre-IPO stage, like I mentioned, someone else would do it anyway.
Yes.
So how do we unlock that growth and create a good funnel through to the sort of later stage in the market? So that's kind of our approach in terms of the clients we focus on. But in terms of our services, Pauline touched on it a little bit. So we support our clients in getting investor ready and kind of polishing a rough diamond, if you like.
Yes.
So we do vet our clients before bringing them on as well. So we want to make sure that, we're not wasting the founder's time, we're not wasting our time or our investors' time. And with that, it means that we're able to foster really great relationships across the ecosystem because we are client first, but we're also very mindful of, delivering in terms of quality as well.
Yes.
So we support our clients with the sort of investor readiness piece, and we look at their fundraise, what they're looking to achieve, really get to know the business and kind of get in the mindset of the team and where they want to take the business, because I think that really drives the kind of investor or funding provider that they're looking for. And we help with in terms of what the round looks like. So is it equity? Is it debt? Debt is particularly interesting because a lot of founders don't really think about that. It's not very intuitive. Typically, the banking market, it's been more focused on, sustainable, profit-generating businesses. So with the likes of venture debt, for example, or revenue-based financing providers, they're really opening up the market to more options for early-stage businesses that are generating revenue and that can pay back their loans, essentially. But so we open up the kind of founder's mind around these kind of particular options. And then we're very bespoke in terms of the investors that we'll engage with. And we also give time back to the founder because we make sure that the investor or whoever we're going to introduce is interested.
Yes.
You've got to, you're running a business as a founder and you're fundraising, and in the current market, there's a slowdown, things are taking longer. So it's really stretching the founding team even more than it was before.
Yeah.
So we really stress in terms of we give time back to the founders, but we're not here to do everything for them.
Yes.
I know that investors think, okay, the founder should be doing everything, but actually, is it realistic? And we kind of bring them in where they're dealing with an investor that's interested and they can tell their story. That's really up to them. It's their baby, it's their vision.
Yes.
So that's kind of fundraising side of things. And then we also consult. So we get under the hood of the business to unlock growth. So we have, I guess, two elements to that. So with Madonna Capital, we have our own in-house expertise. And then we also have a fantastic partner network. So, again, really maximizing the impact we can have for our client. And we try to be holistic but fair. And we focus on what we can do. And we activate our partners where we feel like, okay, they would be better off doing that. So, for instance, we're not lawyers.
Yes.
We work with various law firms to, support our sort of fast growth, innovative clients. But in terms of in-house, so I'm an interim chief growth officer.
Yes.
So working between technology, finance and sales, given my experience in banking and building out technology platforms and propositions. And I also support on the venture debt front as well. And then Pauline has amazing experience from a CFO perspective. So I'll hand it over to Pauline on that front.
Yeah, great. So I, help our clients with fractional CFO services, which is in high demand at the moment.
Yes, indeed.
Because with fractional CFO work, what it means is that at an earlier stage, it doesn't really make sense to have a full-time CFO, but they would really benefit with experience and network and the technical knowledge of what I can bring as a CFO.
Yes.
So I can, in terms of my experience, I've done audit, compliance, business strategy, budgeting, a whole list goes on, but also on the operating side as well. So I can give a very holistic view of what what should be done from a finance as well as an operations and strategic perspective. I've built teams internationally, hired and fired quite a few people. I've done board reporting, done reporting to stock exchange. So the really boring stuff to the more exciting stuff.
Yes.
And it's just really in terms of once a founder has raised funds, how do you then deploy? It's not like with a snap of a finger, your team just magically appears and you've just hired the right team. So it's really about slotting, from my perspective as well as Clara's perspective, slotting ourselves in, helping with the strategic stuff, helping building a team and infrastructure, and then basically making ourselves redundant and then
Fantastic.
moving on to the next project and next client.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you both for that introduction. I know, we really covered a lot there from,
Do you have any questions left?
Don't worry.
over
There'll
now,
be
right?
more.
We've
There'll be
covered
more.
everything.
I didn't want to, sort of disrupt the flow, but it was all gold dust. So if we sort of take it from the top, and we talk about the problem, which is the fact that, female funding only represents, say, 1 to 2% of the market in the UK.
Consistently for the last 10 years.
Yes, yeah. Well, hopefully over the last 2 since Madonna Capital was founded, we're seeing some uptick there.
Yeah, it's 5% now because of us.
That's it. And you keep pushing, and that impact will come through, which it's a fantastic initiative. Clara, you mentioned that the main focus is predominantly, say, seed to Series B, and I really like the point you made about the funnel because, I guess coming from a growth background, I appreciate the importance of the funnel and, really filling that on at the top so that when you think about the sort of pre-IPO and, maybe private equity exits, there's a greater quantity at the bottom. I wanted just to draw attention to a point that you mentioned about fundraising, because I heard a quote the other day that when founders are working on a fundraise, there was a survey that was conducted and 90% of their time is dedicated to, the fundraise itself. And I think it's really good that, that's something that you're helping support the founders with, to give them back time.
Thank you. And that's part of why we exist as well, because it is challenging.
Yes.
It is really challenging. So you've got a process that whether you're a man or a woman fundraising, it is very difficult. And then on top of that, in terms of access to financing for women, it's more restricted versus men.
Yes.
And I don't mean that it's happened to spite women. It's just how things have evolved. If you look at the kind of finance market, whether it's banking or equities and VC, there are typically more men at those senior levels, at that voting committee level, where they're actually saying, do we do this deal or not?
Yes.
And as a result, it kind of flows through down into the market.
Yeah.
So this is, a great example of why we've set up and we're doing what we're doing to kind of break down those issues and those barriers by, like I said, giving time back to the founder. And also it is a grueling process. And I mentioned earlier that the market is slowing down now, and it can really fatigue a founder. And they can get to a point where they think, is this happening because my business isn't good enough?
Yes.
And just being there to support them with, just to push through and be there in terms of, I guess, maintaining their resilience, because it is tough when you get a lot of no's.
Yeah. What do you think the 3 main challenges for founders are while they're fundraising?
For founders, I think the founders that we've worked with, especially focused on female founders, you don't see a lot of, I haven't personally met a lot of, second or third time female founders, but I have met quite a few, second or third time male founders.
Yes.
So for them, it's just understanding the process and what to expect, understanding the level of rejection that might get, and understanding that the reasons for rejection from VCs and other investors may not be what it seems. And then just understanding what feedback to take on and what feedback is essentially bullshit.
Yes.
So I think, that's where we help. So we can give them guidance over, well, this is normal, this is not normal, this is fair, this is not fair, we've seen this before, we haven't seen that before.
Yes.
I think it's just the expectation going into a fundraise for a first-time founder. Second issue, I think the most, serious issue that you've, in terms of the statistics that you've seen, is really the time that is spent on fundraising. It always takes probably twice as long as you would expect it to.
Yeah.
Especially right now with the market the way that it is, fundraising is taking much longer.
Yes.
Not because Well, I would say yes, because of you know, the capital is somewhat drying up. But also because of the much longer due diligence process that is taking place compared to, say, 2021. So yeah, the time element. Third issue for a founder.
I can chip in.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think it's just access to network, right? You may have a brilliant idea in a space that's nothing to do with finance, and all of a sudden you need to raise finance.
Yes.
So you have to all of a sudden get to know how the landscape works, and there is a certain type of lingo. I remember when I started in banking, I didn't know what anyone was talking about. It was I was drowning in a sea of acronyms.
Yes.
You know, and it's quite intimidating. And prior to banking, I did have a finance background in my education, so I struggle. So I cannot imagine what it's like for someone who doesn't come from finance, who's doing this for the first time.
Yes.
And then they don't have the access to the network. So it is really challenging. So that's another thing we do, you know, opening up our extensive network. We have angels, angel syndicates, VC, some private equity, banks and family offices and debt providers.
Yes.
So rather than having to do, I think we're in and around 30 years combined experience, and having to do that in the space of 12 months of a fundraise, our clients can tap into that, and it becomes more of an efficient and productive process as a result.
Indeed, indeed. Well, look, very good points from both of you, you know, from the fact that, you know, there aren't as many, you know, second or third time founders who are females, you know, alleviating the time pressure on founders, particularly, you know, during a difficult capital raising market, and then providing them access to, you know, a friendly network and supportive network. I think those are very good, you know, points that you've made and that you're solving. But let's talk about problems that arise after success. So, you know, Pauline, you mentioned that you also provide assistance and support when founders have raised capital, but they don't know how to deploy it. Yeah. So what would you say are the three main challenges when it comes to deploying capital after a successful raise?
I guess there's a psychology behind suddenly seeing £10 million in your bank account when you've been, you know, struggling. Hopefully you're not struggling, but, you know, I don't know many startup founders who haven't struggled at some point.
Yeah.
So I guess the first reaction is, wow, I've got all this money. Let's just spend it all.
Yes.
And yes, I think like when you have limited resources, you're a lot more efficient with your capital. And I think, you know, that's the first thing, is to have a finance partner or have someone who's good with numbers, who can keep you accountable for the spending of the money. Because as a founder, and I've worked with founders before where they're like, wow, it's my money, it's my baby, I'm going to do what I want with it. So it's having someone that you can trust and that you respect to come in and say, well, what are your targets? What are the milestones? Does it make sense to spend £1 million on, you know, physical ads, you know, in the tube stations for a B2B SaaS business? You know, just someone coming in and sense checking.
Yes.
To make sure that you're spending the right amount. The second, I guess, is really around team. I think that there's a lot of talent.
Yes. But
there's a shortage of the right talent for your specific company, for your specific need at this moment in time.
Yes.
So I guess I see a lot of startups, you know, employing people who are used to working for large corporates. And having done both, I can tell you that working for a startup is really, you know, you're rolling up your sleeves and you're just doing whatever needs to be done at a particular point in time. Yeah. When you've got a lot of money to spend in hiring someone, you're potentially going for the bright, shiny thing, which could be, you know, a company that you aspire to be one day.
Yes.
You want to hire people from that company.
Yeah.
But as I said, you know, when it comes to hiring from large corporate, they may not suit a startup in terms of working style and personal ambitions and goals. And the third challenge is, I guess, to keep keep growing and keep thinking about your next fundraise.
Yes.
If you're raising around, say, a seed round, and that gives you about 18 months runway, you basically want to warm up your relationships as soon as possible. The best time to fundraise is when you don't need to fundraise.
Indeed.
Because you're in the best position of power. You can start negotiating. You can start, telling potential investors how well you're doing. That's the time when you should start sending out newsletters. Basically communicate your success.
Yes.
And then one more challenge, I think it's really about finding the right time to corporatize and to, build infrastructure without compromising on the culture that you've cultivated as a startup, because you want to keep that innovation, that culture of innovation. But then at the same time, you want to be able to build that infrastructure to keep growing, so that by the time you're a much larger scale up or startup, that infrastructure is already there and can support that further growth. So it is about finding that balance between building structure, putting processes and accountability in place, and being able to do that so that you could, as a founder, you can then step away from doing everything.
Yes.
As a founder, you're just doing everything. Your marketing, your sales, your customer support, your business development, your everything. And at some point, as a founder, you need to step away from that identity.
Yes.
And trust someone else and train someone else, or train a team, or put in processes to replicate what you were doing, or parts of what you were doing.
Indeed. Yeah, look, really good points. And I think, a key sort of learning from Revolut was, in order to scale, you've got to automate. Just automate.
Yeah.
There's nothing more disruptive, I think, for founders and for startups to sort of start replacing systems because they've outgrown them. That's a really huge issue.
Yeah.
And, you talked a lot about partnering, and I guess a question for Clara, because you did a lot of work with Barclays with the sort of innovation projects that they had on. Barclays and the other banks, they create these innovation hubs so that they can partner and grow, these companies. How does Madonna Capital work with companies sort of on an ongoing basis? You mentioned that the focus is from seed onwards, say to Series B. What does that partnership look like?
Yeah, I suppose, at Barclays or many other banks, it's kind of different. So typically they would want to stay close to the innovation in the market and then bring it in-house. There's usually a strategic angle. So it's slightly different at Madonna Capital, but in terms of, I guess, how we work with them. So most of what we do is centered around a fundraise. So we're really looking at then as a really good focal point to sort of get to know the client. And in addition to the fundraising, there's all sorts of things that come out of, that particular sort of transaction or working with that client. So we've kind of touched upon post-fundraising services. So
Yes.
we offer that because, like Pauline's outlined, you really need someone to understand how do you deploy that capital efficiently and effectively in order to grow. So that's one element. I suppose that, and touching upon, hiring talent as well, we have partner networks where, it could be a CTO, obviously Pauline's an amazing CFO, and we have other hubs which actually provide access to talent.
Yes.
So it's really centered around the company strategy, what they're looking for, what their needs are, and plugging those in where we can't support.
Fantastic. And I guess an open question, do you have an example of a client that, you partnered with from very early days that has gone on to be a big success story?
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, we've got to bear in mind we're only 2 years old.
Yes, yes.
We've supported some businesses. So we'd like to think that those will obviously mature and be successful.
Yeah.
I suppose what I will say is that we've had companies that have come back to us for subsequent fundraisers. So I think in the short term, that seems like a success in terms of
yes.
How we've supported. We've had repeat clients in just such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
We have clients that are, like bigger and then pre-IPO, but probably can't talk about those too much.
Yes.
Confidentiality. But I suppose just being able to fundraise, on multiple occasions in a short time frame has shown that there is some success there.
Indeed.
I mean, the industries that we've the companies that we've supported and the industries that they're from has been really mixed. So it's been sort of robotics, health tech, sort of diagnostics, e-commerce, marketplaces. It's a real mix.
Yeah.
Tech.
Yeah.
Wow.
Food, F&B, which is, kind of not a random one, but because we support high growth businesses, high growth and innovative businesses.
Yeah.
I guess what speaks to success of our clients and of us as well is, we have VCs who come to us, who ask us to help them raise for their portfolio companies.
Yes.
For the very same reason as what we've just spoken about, which is giving time back to the founders so they can continue to scale and build.
Yes, fantastic. And so I take it from, the number of different industries and verticals that both of you have just mentioned that Madonna Capital is vertical agnostic.
Yep. So, we're industry agnostic.
Yes.
When we talk about, say, deep tech, so for example, we were looking at a space tech company at one point, we'll call in experts in our network to basically validate the tech, and to also give their view as to whether it makes commercial and business sense.
Yes.
To use the tech in that particular way.
Mm-hmm.
When we looked at space tech, we got an aerospace engineer had a call with him, gave us his view.
Yeah.
And that's how we utilize our network as well.
Far out, yeah. I mean, that's a different one.
Literally far out in space.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
it.
the robotics company was very cool.
Yeah.
We met the robot.
Yes.
And I actually had a conversation with the robot as well.
Yeah.
Which is mind-blowing.
I think this is probably the most interesting segment of the podcast ever recorded. I mean, this is, pardon the pun, out of this world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. That's awesome. In terms of, we're filming in early 2023 right now. What sort of roadmap or plans does Madonna Capital have for 2023?
So I think, we mentioned that partner network and we want to maximize our impact. So I think it's really about how do we, I'm going to use this word really carefully, but industrialize it. And why I want to use that kind of like word very carefully is there are a lot of platforms in this market, fundraising and so on. I think seeders have done really well, but in terms of just generally fundraising and pulling in investors, I think there still needs to be that relationship angle, and I think that's really lost in these platforms.
Yes. Yeah.
So right now we're kind of balancing between scaling using technology to really access our partner network in a meaningful way still.
Yeah.
But we're still kind of being involved with the businesses. So it's like, how do we strike that balance? How do we maximize that impact? These are the kind of questions that we're thinking about for this year.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're very long-term relationship driven. So when we're working with a client, we're not just thinking about how they're going to raise now, but how they're going to raise in the next round. How do they position themselves best so that by the time there is an exit, it is meaningful and it's life-changing for them. And so we're not just, connecting them with investors that can come in now, but investors that they would want to build a relationship with and keep in touch with. As I mentioned before, the best time to fundraise is when you don't need to fundraise. Yeah. So, connecting them with investors that can come in at a later round, for example. And I really echo Clara's point. We really want to make a bigger impact because right now, I don't think that in the market there's, well, at least in London, there is another firm that works with their clients to the level that we work with our clients. Yes. We're very, very hands-on. We become friends with the founders. we don't just help with the fundraise. Sometimes, because our network is so wide, we help with B2B sales and distribution as well.
Fantastic.
Because we're both naturally connectors of people.
Yes.
When I'm talking to someone, like, for example, when I met you a few weeks ago, I'm thinking, well, is there someone that I can introduce them to? Is there the clients that we're working with now, could they benefit with someone that you might know? So our brain is always on, always thinking about how can we benefit our clients.
Yeah.
So we're thinking in terms of industrializing ourselves. How can we scale ourselves out without compromising on the quality that we bring, and value that we bring to our clients.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, look, I think it's an excellent challenge for 2023 to industrialize and scale, but maintain that quality relationship that you've got with the different founders. I think, it might be a question that you get a fair bit, but would you consider growing the team?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. We'll clone ourselves.
Yeah. We'll wait to invest in that technology and then,
Yeah.
No, definitely we will. What that looks like, we've got a couple of people that, is part of a team remotely.
Yes.
They're more from a support perspective.
Yeah.
But in terms of growing in, I guess, the consulting perspective, that's in the roadmap.
Yes.
Not sure if it's a 2023 thing. I think we might want to focus on the technology first, to be able to scale ourselves out before taking on someone else.
Yes.
Just because if we were to have someone join us, we want to be able to spend the time to nurture them, to grow them, to train them as well.
Yeah.
The Madonna Capital way. So not in the immediate, there's no immediate need to grow the team right now.
Fantastic. Yeah. I think hiring someone it's a huge investment. You gotta, like you mentioned, Pauline, you've got to get them to focus and think in the same way as the two of you, to really work on that quality relationship and deliver the same value.
Yeah. And actually, focus on the purpose, because it would be very easy for us to say, you know what, raising for the 2%, that is bloody hard.
Yeah.
We're already, kind of starting from, the back foot in a way. It, we have had many opportunities and people come to us and say, can you raise for us? I'm like, well, actually, no, because you don't satisfy, what we look for in the team, which is, a female senior exec in the team. So female founder, female co-founder, female, C-suite level person with meaningful equity and influence in the business.
Yeah, fantastic.
So if we were to have, build the team, we would need people who are on board with our mission and our purpose.
Yes. And
not be distracted by the shiny new things and the easy things, which is really to raise for, an all-male team maybe.
Yeah.
I guess that every VC's dream is to back a founder who's, founded and exited multiple companies before, like an Adam Newman, for example.
Yeah.
I was going to mention him. Yeah.
I mean... to be able to come in having, exited a company disgracefully.
Yes.
And then unsuccessfully founding another business. And then coming in and starting another business, and having money basically thrown at him is quite frustrating when we are, lacking funding for female founders.
Indeed.
So, we would need someone who's on the mission that we're solving, which is to focus on female founders.
Fantastic. Yeah, really good points. So we've talked a lot about female founders, and I think, we should also acknowledge there's a lot of really good female operators out there, including, the two of you, you're both founders and operators. And I guess I'll start with Clara. It would be great, to hear your top 3 takeaways for founders and operators.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to start off with the personal one.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the time, whether it's personal or professional life, people tend to set goals. Nothing wrong with that. But actually, I think the thing that holds you back, and I say this because I'm trying to do this personally, is actually to fear set. Because fear setting, at least you're focusing on overcoming things that are consistent barriers to you, whether it's personal or professional. And in that regard, maybe that will unlock growth and development far quicker than actually focusing on, still focus on the goals, have a vision, absolutely. But to fear set and focus on how you get over those barriers, I think is not really spoken about that much, but can be very, very effective. I'm finding it effective in my life, so I like to share that with others. I suppose in terms of the market, I know I'm rehashing it, but just be mindful that things are taking longer, be resilient. If an investor says, oh, I'm really excited about this opportunity, just almost ignore that until the money is in the bank.
Yes.
Especially now with a lot of funds they are trying to raise for their next fund, and they want to build a pipeline. So they have an agenda, which means that they're going to tell you they're really, really interested to build their pipeline when they may not actually have the money.
Yes.
So I think just be very mindful of that and kind of just say, okay, great, you're interested, fantastic. Keep that investor very engaged, but in the back of your mind, almost have the attitude that it's not happening.
Yes.
And then the third one, I suppose that, again, just kind of tuning into where we are in the market. Things are taking longer, and before it was growth at all costs. Very glamorized, especially with the US markets, like the Ubers of this world, Beyond Meat, and so on and so forth. But now I think the attitude's really changed. So think about, okay, how do you plan for sustainability? And what I mean by that is have a clear route to profitability, have a good handle on if your growth case doesn't come out and, things are delayed, that what are the levers in your business to pull. So you're like, okay, so if I fire this many staff or reduce my marketing spend or other areas of costs, what will my business look like? What will I prioritize in terms of trimming the fat?
Yeah.
And so how long can I survive and kind of ride this wave? And I think that's always kind of a good thing to have in the back of your mind, not only for operating your business and making sure that you're ensuring its survival, but also from an investor perspective, it shows you've got a really great handle on the business.
Yes.
And they are looking for sustainability more, which is interesting because it's taken the venture out of venture capital. So obviously they still want to make their returns, but they're kind of asking for something different right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's more of a lesson for now in terms of where the market's at. But it's where I say my top 3 would be.
Yeah, excellent. And I think, that final point you made about, sustainability, ultimately, if you're really, really solving a problem well, there's going to be traction and, people will be on that route towards, profitability, focus on the problem as much as possible, and then that will translate into genuine traction.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Thank you for those, Clara. And Pauline, any 3 top takeaways?
Well, Clara said it all. 3 takeaways for founders when it comes to fundraising or just general?
Anything you want.
3 takeaways for founders and operators. I think, Clara kind of covered the fundraising process as well as what the market is doing at the moment.
Yes.
I think mine is a bit more personal when it comes to the founders themselves. I had a friend called me a few weeks ago. She has an amazing job in the ecosystem. And I guess she was a little bit frustrated with where she is at the moment in her career. And, she wanted to come out and do her own thing, which she would be amazing at because she's got the experience, she's got the technical expertise, she's got the network, and she's an amazing person as well. She's hardworking and smart. So basically, she will make a great founder. And a lot of people ask me, when is a good time to start a business.
Yes.
And some people would say it's never a good time to start. And some people say you just got to go and start doing it.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think that for me personally, you know, I'm at the level in my career where I have enough skills and experience to be able to advise and consult. And that is basically my job, right?
Yes.
I wouldn't be in the same position if I was, say, 21 or 18, you know, without the same amount of experience,
Yes.
expertise, the failures and mistakes I've made as well.
Yeah.
That makes me who I am today. So I think that, yes, I'm learning every day and I'll continue to learn. But there is a level of experience and expertise that is backing me to be able to do the job that I'm doing and to do it well.
Yes.
So I would say think about where you're at personally and whether you have the skills and experience to at least, I guess, deliver a minimal level of service or to create a minimum level of product.
Yes.
Because that just makes your life easier.
Yeah.
And also from a mental health perspective as well. The second thing really is also quite personal for a founder is when you start a company, do you have enough runway, personal runway, to be able to live? Because mental health is so important.
Yes.
If you're not the full person that you are from a mental health perspective, you're not going to be able to build a sustainable business.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I was talking to an investor the other day about, you know, the founder being a whole person when they come to work.
Yes.
You're always just talking about how the company is performing, you know, what are the milestones that the company is achieving. But, you know, what happens if a founder breaks down one day? They, especially at an early stage, they are the business.
Yes.
So it's really important to, you know, look after your kind of your runway and your financial health and your mental health.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially with, you know, everything that went on during COVID. Everyone had I didn't really have a hard time, but I know a lot of people that did have a hard time.
Yeah.
And there's been a real focus on mental health. So just being the full person and the whole person and a happy person will make a better, you know, company and a better company culture as well.
Yes.
And then the third takeaway is, for me, again, very personal. Starting Madonna Capital with Clara, you know, I had a fulfilling corporate career. Could I have been paid more? Yes. Did I want more freedom? Also, yes.
Yes.
And it's really about, you know, for me it was the 3 Ps, the people, profit, and purpose. And you know, you can make money, you can make profit, and still serve a purpose.
Indeed.
It's not just about making money, making a profit, because what does that really mean at the end of the day?
Yeah.
If you're not doing something that's fulfilling, that's purposeful, and that is helping someone else, and, you know, basically improving the lives of people around us. And that's why, even though my expertise is in luxury consumer, I'm really into health tech.
Yes.
Because that is literally saving lives.
Indeed.
I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not able to personally, you know, develop a technology that will literally save lives. But have been very privileged to have worked with female founders who are scientists developing diagnostics that literally saves lives.
Yes, indeed.
So yeah, that's my third key takeaway for founders.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you very much for those. And, you know, I think the luckiest people of the audience, normally they get 3 key takeaways. And, you know, on this episode, they get 6 fantastic ones. So thank you both. Clara, Pauline, anything else that you'd like to close off with before we wrap up today?
Yeah, message to investors. You got to invest in female founders. It makes good business sense.
Fantastic, very, very good point. And I hope that this podcast is going to live on as a sort of a seed that gets planted, and we grow leaves and investment stems off it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
hopefully. Thanks so
Excellent.
much.
Thanks for having us.
No, thank you both for attending. Thank you.